we all know when we dated like a guy that, his phone broke or he disappeared for 3 days and he's like, oh, but we all know, right?
Yeah.
We know we
Yeah.
can choose to go, oh,
Yeah.
maybe his phone did break.
Totally.
Right. But we
Yeah.
know. And I think it starts with really just like reflecting on all these moments in our life, or when we're in a group with girlfriends at coffee and something felt like it wasn't true or off, or, and we look back at those times. And I think the more we can do that, the stronger we build it going forward.
Yeah.
I'd love to go a little bit deeper on this process, Jamie, if that's okay with you, because I think you're right. Like, I think people really struggle with that. And I think you see oftentimes, like when people don't make it work, it's because that sense of purpose, it's that sense of meaning. So I'm curious, kind of, how long ago was this when you kind of, you said you took you 2 years until you had this catalyst. How long ago was that?
So 06 and 07, 2006, 2007. And then I eventually just decided, like, I'm going to go for it. And, it's a funny story, but I was on my honeymoon flight to South Africa and wrote the business plan on my honeymoon with my husband, which is, by the way, the least romantic way to start any marriage, is to write your business plan on your honeymoon. And then for anyone listening who runs their business, or with like a loved one or a family or partner or friend, it is wild how difficult it is to navigate like all of the blurring of lines in the relationship. But I think when you go into it the first time, you think like, oh, but you trust that person more than anybody, and it's just going to be great. And it ended up being great, but really hard. But anyhow, wrote the business plan on our honeymoon flight to South Africa, got back, literally quit our jobs. We poured every penny we had into the business, which wasn't much. It was every penny of savings that we had. And I just thought, if we create a product that actually works, like that really truly works, it's just going to sell, right? And I think a lot of entrepreneurs have had this experience where you're like, it's so good, why isn't it selling? Like, why is everyone saying no, and why is it so difficult? And it was 2008 when we had our first product and first couple of products, and I believed in them so much. And, I sent them to every retailer, every department store, every beauty retailer, every online retailer, QVC, which is a live television shopping channel in the US that's broadcast to 100 million homes. And I just had this vision, Nathan, like I saw it so clear. The only problem was no one else did. And it was like, it is so hard when people that you put on a pedestal, right? Like a lot of these beauty retailers, I mean, I used to save my waitressing tip money to shop in their stores. And I just thought for sure they would love this product because it works. But they didn't. And every single one of them said no after no after no after no after no. And one thing I learned, that I wish I learned this lesson sooner. I would have saved myself so many nights crying myself to sleep. But what I learned, I was trying to do something different, right? I was trying to use, images of real people. I was trying to sort of change the definition of beauty, and it wasn't just about the products that worked. It was about sort of the big picture thing. And every single one of them would say, like, that's not going to work. Like they would always tell me, Nathan, you need to use images of unattainable aspiration. They'd always say those words, unattainable aspiration. And they would say that women will only buy products from images they can never possibly look like. And I got that that's how it's always been done, but I was trying to do it differently. And the biggest lesson that I wish I had learned sooner is, if you are doing something authentic to yourself, which by definition, there's only one of you. So if it's authentic and being done your way, it means it's new, it's novel, it's never been done before. Or if you're doing something crazy innovative or disruptive, or, a product that's never been done before, when you're doing something different or authentic to you, don't be surprised when, even people that tout themselves as visionaries, or they're, heads of industry or heads of, retail or whatever it might be. Don't be surprised if even the experts don't believe in what you're doing, because what I have learned is so many well-intentioned people, really smart people that are truly just brilliant and believe they are visionaries. They often cannot believe in something unless they have the psychological sort of social proof that it's already been successful in their mind. Unless they've already seen it successful, they have a hard time actually seeing it working, and because they've never seen proof of it before. And a lot of people don't realize that's how they think. They don't know why they're not believing in something. But what I found was so many people, and they were people that, again, well-intentioned and really, really smart, but they're often incapable of seeing something succeeding unless it's already been done. And so for any founder or entrepreneur or person with big goals or dreams, or even, talent and art and creations you want to put out in the world, what I've learned is you have to get really good at cheering for yourself along this journey, because often people will only cheer for you after you've made it, like after you've proven it. And I used to take it so personal and really try to bounce back, try to remember my why, try to get still and hear my own gut that always said to keep going. But it is hard when you get no after no after no. And 20 no's in, it's like you start to think like, well, maybe this isn't going to work, or was my gut wrong? You know what I mean? And I think those are the moments when you get still, and some people might pray, some people might meditate, some people might just try to hear what is their gut telling them. But I think when you get still and you listen for the answer, I think your gut is always more powerful than anyone else's advice. No matter who's telling you no, or you're not the right fit or whatever right now.
Yeah, so I have to ask, for you, when did you know that it was going to work?
Well, so from the moment we launched It Cosmetics, right? This was in our living room, couldn't afford to pay ourselves, and all the money had gone into our product. And so I remember, this is a funny story that maybe someone listening or watching this will relate to. But after all of these no's from everyone, I was like, all right, you know what? We're going to go direct to consumer. Like, this product is so good. And we couldn't afford to hire anyone to build our site. And so my husband got this big yellow book called HTML for Dummies. And he built the whole first site. And I remember the day it went live. I was like a little kid on Christmas morning. I was so excited because I just knew, right? You say, when do you knew? I felt like I just knew the moment our site went live, it was going to be huge, and everyone would just buy because the product's so good. And I'll never forget the morning the website went live, and I was just, freaking out, so excited. And an hour into it, there were no orders. And then several hours went by, no orders. The end of the first day, no orders. And this went on and on, day after day after day after day. And finally, I said to my husband, which is so easy to do if you work with someone that you have a personal relationship with, I was like, it's broken. Like, you did it wrong. Like, there's no way this website's working and we're just getting no orders. Like, the product is too good. There's no way. This went on and on and on. And we were weeks into getting no orders. And then I'll never forget the day our very first order came in. I was like screaming, running around the living room. I was so excited. And my husband comes up to me and he goes, that was me. He goes, I placed the order to prove to you our website's not broken. And I was just like, oh. And so it was just like this for a long time. There was crazy moments with investors that I had hoped were going to be kind of like, the person that was going to save it all and get us into retailers. And I just got some of the most painful no's there. But it was one big moment that happened on QVC, was the real moment I knew. And this was over 3 years into the business. But something happened. And when you just feel like the stars align, or you feel like a congruency with your knowing and what's happening in the universe. And you just feel like a God moment, or whatever you want to call it. After years of QVC saying no, and that's the live 24-hour shopping channel, they broadcast to 100 million homes, and they're really large in the US in particular, and in some other countries around the world as well. But they had said no. I got their head guy on the phone once after a few years of hearing no. I got him on the phone, and his name's Alan Burke, and he was like, thank you. We've reviewed your product with all the buyers, and it's unanimous that you're not the right fit for QVC or for our customers. So there were a lot of not just like, oh no, not now, but like, no, right? So we've been hearing no for so long. And I was at a beauty trade show demonstrating our product, and met one of the QVC hosts and talked to the buyers, and making a long story short, but I kind of went for it. You're not supposed to leave your booth, but I kind of went for it, and just finally went up to one of the buyers in person and just like pitched the brand and poured my heart out. And I was freaking out. I remember sweat running down my whole thing. Anyways, every entrepreneur who's almost broke knows this feeling, but I was just like, you don't want to seem desperate, but you also like don't want to have any regret. So you just go for it. Poured my heart out to her, and we got one shot. We got a yes, and we got one big shot on QVC. And not only was this moment about to be the moment I knew this is going to be really big, but it's also the moment I learned, one of the most powerful lessons as it pertains to authenticity as a founder. And so what happened was we got a yes that they would give us one shot, which was a 10-minute segment live on their broadcast. And at that point, we were doing just 2 to 3 orders a day on our website, which did work. And but that was all we were doing. And they said in this 10-minute window, in order to hit their sales goal, we would need to sell over 6,000 units of our concealer. And we had no money. So we started applying for SBA loans. 22 banks said no. The 23rd bank, which was California Bank and Trust, said yes. And they gave us an SBA loan just to cover the QVC purchase order. And right, for this one big shot. And then, Nathan, I learned it's consignment. It's a consignment deal, which was like, oh, we're not even, so if anyone listening isn't familiar with consignment, what our terms meant were that, we had to pay for, manufacture, ship in all over 6,000 units of product. But if I went live on the air and nothing sold, or just a few sold, we had to take it all back. And we wouldn't be paid for it. And by the way, if it was like a big breaking news day or something, no one's gonna watch the TV shopping channel, and then you're totally screwed. And so there's all these like risk factors, which normally you should never, right? As an entrepreneur, as a founder, you should never accept a purchase order you can't afford to lose, like ever. And but at this point, we were sort of out of options, and we were most likely not going to make it anyways. And so we said yes. And in this process, we hired a couple of third-party consultants that are awesome. And they help a lot of people sell their product in store and their products on QVC. But here's what happened is they all told me the same thing, which was, okay, if you're going to have a chance at succeeding, because most companies that go on QVC, they're not able to hit the sales goals, so they don't come back. They all told me the same thing. If you're going to have your best chance at succeeding, here's what you need to do. In your 10-minute segment, we want you need to use this type of model, which was all flawless skin, kind of like you'd see in beauty ads. And you need to do it this way. And I would say to them, okay, but that's not authentic to like why I created this brand. And I would say like, what if, I put a model in her 70s, and then I put another model who's dealing with acne. And then what if I show my own, like I take my makeup off and show my bright red rosacea on national television, and then I prove how the product works. And like, they were mortified, you know what I mean? And they were for me, like they really wanted me to succeed. But again, they'd only seen one type of way succeed. And so I was in this big dilemma. And I flew out to QVC, which is in the state of Pennsylvania in the United States. And I got in a rental car, and I was there a week early, and I sat in this rental car, praying, crying. Like, I felt like I remember watching the front door of the building and people going in and out all day. And I knew, like, the next time I walked through those doors, I was either going to be bankrupt or like my whole life would be changed, but I didn't know which one it was going to be. And I think everyone can relate to this situation where, like, I was tempted. If I'm going to be really honest, I sat in that car and I was tempted to, like, not do it authentically. I'm like, well, maybe I would think things like, well, maybe if I do it their way and it works, and then I can make some money, not go bankrupt, then I'll try it my way. Like, I had all those thoughts. But I also know you can't fake authenticity. I also know that, like, there's no way, and this is what a lot of people get wrong in their businesses. There is no way to have a human connection with someone else, like a true connection, unless you show up fully authentically, like, for better or worse. There's just no way. And people that even know that forget that your relationship with your customer is the same. It's the same. And I remember sitting in that car going, if I'm truly going to connect with, you know, every person watching at home, like, I have to fully show up with my authentic intention for this product. And, you know, I remember thinking, who is my customer? And I kept imagining this single mom, like, folding laundry, who was too busy to remember she was beautiful and that she mattered. And I just had this moment in the car where I was like, you know what? I would rather have her turn on her television, even if she's going to give me 5 seconds of her time. I want her to see me showing women that look like her and calling them beautiful and meaning it. Like, even if she buys nothing, I'd rather stand for that than, like, sell a whole bunch of products and stand for nothing. And so I knew what I had to do, but we know what we have to do often, and it's not the easy thing. It's usually the scary thing, and the risky thing. And I remember walking into the building and into the studio, and we were going to get that one shot. And so I walked in, and right in the big studio, there's these cameras, and the host was there. And then there was a clock that was on the ground that was set at 10 minutes. And then there was a live clock to tell you what was happening in the show. And then, Nathan, I learned that, like, okay, it's all on the line, right? I have this 10-minute window. Everything's on the line. And then I learned you're not guaranteed the 10 minutes. Like, if you go live and your clock starts going and you're not hitting sales goals, like, you could be a minute in and they cut your time all the way down to, like, 2 minutes left. And I was like, oh gosh, I'm not even guaranteed this. And so it was wild. And one of the scariest and best days of my career and also of my life, I remember the moment the clock started and we were like at 9:59, 9:58, 9:50, and I was like, and I was shaking, I was sweating. Like, I remember I had on 2 pairs of Spanx, which wasn't because of how it wasn't like I needed to look a certain way. I was trying to make sure sweat did not go through my dress. And I wasn't nervous about TV. I was just like, the whole company, like the weight of the whole company was like, it felt like it was hanging in that moment. And I remember the moment on live television where they brought up my before shot. So it was a barefaced before shot where you can see my bright red, bumpy rosacea. And I remember walking over to all the models, and they were every age and skin tone and skin challenge and size and shape and then I didn't know how we were doing, but I wasn't cut yet, so I knew that was good. And then we got down to it was like 1 minute left, and the host was like, the deep shade's almost gone, the tan shade's almost sold out. And it was literally right at the 10-minute mark where this giant sold out sign came up across the screen. And this was the moment when you say, what's the moment you knew? I remember tears streaming down my face. And I remember the producers were worried I was going to faint. I guess new people faint sometimes because of pressure. and they cut from my presentation and went to like Dyson vacuum or something. And I remember my husband came running through the double doors of the studio, and I was just sobbing, and I'm like, real women have spoken. And I remember he just looked at me and he put his fist up in the air and he's like, we're not going bankrupt. And I was just like, ah! And it was just like this moment where it felt like I risked it all. And at the same time, all I did was make a decision from a place of congruency and authenticity. And what I continued to learn as we grew and grew and grew, we eventually became the largest beauty brand in QVC's history. And it is to this day. And I was doing over 250 live shows a year myself for many years. And built a team of over 1,000. So I have other people going on. But what I learned after seeing tens of thousands of brands come through the doors and meeting their entrepreneurs and their founders and their heads of sales going on the air, most of them don't make it. And the one big thing I learned is like, while authenticity alone doesn't automatically guarantee success, that inauthenticity guarantees failure. And what I would observe is that the very few people that would make it with their brands, they were never the ones that, even necessarily had the best product or the most money behind their marketing or anything else. It was when the person they had go on air was the same on air as they were in the green room. Whether they were extroverted or introverted or wild, or it didn't matter. But there is that sort of like congruency and that through line of authenticity that you can't fake, and people feel it. And so the people that were truly authentic and who they were in the green room, but then all of a sudden they're live in front of 100 million homes and they're the same person, that's who customers would connect with. And for me, that was one of the most powerful lessons, because, we're now in a digital world where everyone's worried about how they're showing up in every digital platform and direct to consumer and on social media. And now more than ever, people can get distracted by what everyone else is doing. And the second you start to dilute your own authenticity or your own secret sauce, that's when you're in trouble. And so I think now more than ever, this lesson is so important.
Yeah, wow. What an incredible story.
Do you feel like if anyone would have said yes or invested or whatever from him or anyone before that, do you think it would have been as successful if people did believe in you?
I mean, there were definitely people along the way that did believe. There were. I just believe in the timing of things. And I believe in trusting our gut and going with our knowing, with everything.
And what if he would have said, yeah, I'm going to give you $1 million or whatever it is to invest, and I'm going to take this much equity? Do you think it would have been as successful of an exit? Or you think you would have been driven to serve more at a higher level with that support and with that backing? Or would it have made you more complacent in some ways during that process?
Having that. I don't know. I mean, I think the only thing that would have gotten in my way is if he owned the majority and wasn't a great partner, because I wasn't driven by the money. Like, I wasn't. I was driven by, what I know I'm born capable of giving. And also just, I loved our mission. I knew what we were doing. We were shifting culture inside the beauty industry. And, there were a lot of people that believed in us along the way. And I mean, with L'Oreal, we got a champion inside of L'Oreal 3 years before we actually did the deal. And she kept wanting them to she's like, look at what this brand's doing, look what this brand's doing. Right. And we would do meetings and they'd end in no's. So it was 3 years of that as well until they acquired us. But yeah, there were people that got it. And then a lot of us learned this lesson. Once we did get into all the retailers and started doing really well, then they all believe in you.
Of course, yeah. Once you get results.
Yeah. When you make people money, they like you.
Of course. They want to be a part of your success.
Yeah.
What are you going to do now? I mean, you sold the company. I know you were still acting as CEO until just very recently as well, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I stayed on as so when we sold It Cosmetics to L'Oreal,
their biggest, by the way, the biggest deal the biggest acquisition they've ever done. Just, it's no big deal, of course, but just the biggest acquisition ever, but ever anyway.
Yeah. And it was this really cool thing. Part of why we decided to do it was we were scaling our own mission so quickly in the US, and we just started launching globally. And I realized, oh my gosh, when you start launching in different countries, they all have different HR policies, regulatory compliance, all those things, right? And I'm like, oh, wow, okay, we can figure this out on our own, but it's going to we're going to go a whole lot slower than if we partner with someone, like L'Oreal that has teams on the ground in over 100 countries, and we can try and shift culture around inclusivity and get our message of beauty out there. So much quicker than we could do it on our own. And after the acquisition, they made me the first woman to hold a CEO title in their 107-year history at the time.
Yes.
Which was
amazing.
great. And I agreed to stay on for 3 years. There's nothing financially holding me to do it. It's just, I think when you give people your word, you want to keep it. And I think when people believe in you, it's good to prove them right if you can.
Yeah.
And so I stayed on for 3
Amazing.
years. We doubled the size of the business the first 2 years post acquisition, which is crazy and awesome. And then, it really for me came down to a learning to trust myself thing,
Yeah.
where 3 years in, for almost a decade, because of our story, I'd hear from lit agents and movie producers, and they'd want me to tell my story. And I was working 100-hour weeks on the business, like legit building it. And I just didn't want someone else to just write a book and have it not be authentic to me. And I wanted to, if I was going to do it, I wanted to be all in. So I actually said no to everyone for years. And then a little over a year ago, I was just like, oh, I just knew it's time. Like I knew everything that I had been through. I don't think it's for me. I really truly believe, and I believe this of every person, that the journey we go on, the stories we have, the setbacks we overcome or don't, all the things, like I realize my greatest joy isn't selling my business but it's not any of those things. Like those things are awesome, don't get me wrong, but like it doesn't fill your soul. Like when we know the things we've gone through can be of service to someone else, like that's the ultimate, right? Whether it's our kids or our friends or someone we've never even met that saw our story on Instagram, whatever it is, it's soul filling. And it made me realize like I was ready, and it was hard to leave the company I built. And after 3 years, I knew to trust myself that this next chapter was how can I serve at an even higher level than I'm doing now? And how can I use everything I've gone through? Like I've done, again, a lot wrong, but there's a lot of things I did right in figuring out like how to accomplish my biggest dreams. So it's like now, and what's next for me is literally pouring into every other woman and person on like their own journey of doing that for themselves, including my daughter and my little son Wilder too, Wonder and Wilder, but like pouring into
What great names too.
Oh, there, thank you. And so, it's really why I wrote this book. It's like my whole prayer for this book is that I get DMs on Instagram and I meet, people in person post COVID. I can't wait.
Right.
And they
I
say to
know.
me like, oh my gosh, like this story or this lesson literally was the thing that helped me break through the self-doubt and help me, go after this dream, or believe I was worthy of being in a relationship that's healthy, or, not shame myself for my own body, not having a baby, or any of those things, right? Because I think like together, the power of story, and when we learn from each other, it helps us believe and on our own journey, going from underestimated to unstoppable.
It's exactly. That's a great. The title is great, by the way. I think besides believe it, the underestimated to unstoppable is exactly what I think is people need to hear, because people feel underestimated. They need to feel
Yeah.
unstoppable. And like I said, I really enjoyed your book. Believe it. I love it.
Yay,
Jamie Marie Kern Lima.
That's so fun. Also, I should share with you too, this is just something fun for your community. So for launch week, right? It's a big launch week of the book. If anyone picks up the book, wherever it's sold, doesn't matter where, we're going to do something special. I just want to share with your community too on and it's free, but on our website, believeit.com, the book name, believeit.com, I'm doing my first ever course. It's a 5-part course on how to go from underestimated to unstoppable. And it's free. It's just for anyone who bought the book the week of book launch. You download it for free. And then you also get an action plan workbook that goes with it, which is how to implement all the lessons. It's over 20 pages, but how to implement the lessons from the book in your real life. So anyway, just something fun to share
That's
with you.
a great, I love it.
As well, because it's fun to get free stuff. And so we're like, what can we do that's really awesome for the launch week of the book, and also to just celebrate everyone that's going to kind of go on their own journey, even more powerfully of becoming the person they're born to be.
Absolutely. When is the actual official launch of this book? When does it come out?
Yeah, February 23rd.
February the 23rd.
Yeah.
Okay. That is amazing.
My first question, I'm going to write a note for myself so I don't forget the second one, because I had two things I want to talk to you about. Was that I'd like to hear you talk a little bit about how you came. I realize this is sort of a vague, nebulous question. I'm not quite sure how you're going to answer, but how is it that you came to trust your own intuition when all your externals at the time are negative? You are not it's not like you're trusting your gut because everything's working, or you're trusting your intuition because opportunity is just like piling up. It was no, 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 no. What was it inside of you or outside of you? I don't really know. That gave you that clear sense of this North Star of knowing that you know what you know and staying the course until you got there.
Yeah. I'm 44 and still, and similar to you for me, first of all, I believe we all have an intuition, and I believe it's more powerful than anyone else's advice. For me, when I share sort of my whole journey in Believe It in my book, I don't just talk about overcoming self-doubt and body doubt. But I also talk about overcoming God doubt. And the reason I bring that up is for me, I went through a long journey with faith, and that included a few decades of God doubt and some big lessons on where my faith is now, which I believe beyond a shadow of a doubt God exists, and but went through a big journey my whole life on that. But what I wanted to share about intuition is, for me, like when I pray, I feel like that is how I hear God, is through my intuition. And so I think that it is the most deeply spiritual practice, is being able to hear ourselves and make the decision to trust ourselves. And in my journey, though, it's been a journey, right? It's this, I think, lifelong, I believe it's a lifelong journey, almost like our intuition's like a muscle we build over time, and get stronger with use, and stronger when we look back on times. If someone were to say, how do I start to hear myself? I don't know if I ever have, or I haven't in a long time. I think one, just wanting to, right? And then two, really looking back at times when you kind of had a gut feeling, but maybe you didn't listen to it. And then what happened? And similarly, times where maybe everyone else gave you certain advice and you're like, and then you trusted yourself, and what happened then? And the more we start, paying attention to all those times in our life, like we all know when we dated like a guy that, his phone broke, or he disappeared for 3 days, and he's like, oh, but we all know, right? Yeah. We know. Yeah. We can choose to go, maybe his phone did break.
Totally.
Right? But we know. And I think it starts with really just like reflecting on all these moments in our life, or when we're in a group with girlfriends at coffee and something felt like it wasn't true or off, or, and we look back at those times. And I think the more we can do that, the stronger we build it going forward. Yeah. And in my journey, it was, and I think also as women, and I know you share a lot about this in some of your work, which I love, and it's so inspiring. But we are taught to not trust ourselves, or to make decisions based on consensus and all kinds of things, right? And, I think I think had I not figured this part out of being able to hear my gut and trust it, cosmetics would have been done in the
It's
first
great
year.
to hear. Yeah. Yeah.
And in the journey, two examples or two stories, I should say, that stand out just to share, in case they're helpful for anyone who needs to hear this too now in their own life, especially is going through a season of what feels like setback or a rejection. But, we were, building the business, and it was like no after no after no. And every time I would send my products to Sephora or Ulta, it was a no. Or I remember we got the head guy of QVC Beauty. So his name's Alan Burke. So he's this legend in the beauty industry. And he's the person that for many years, QVC was kind of known as selling like maybe products people hadn't quite heard of. And some of them they had, but he kind of turned it into this place where all the top luxury brands from department stores wanted to sell their beauty products on QVC. And he's this legend. And I remember this moment, I finally got him on the phone. Like, his assistant said he's willing to do a call with me. And this is after a couple of years of sending my products in and hearing, no. I was like, he's going to do a call. I'm like, there's no way it's going to be a no, because he would not waste his precious time. And I was like freaking out that this was going to be my big break. And I remember I was pacing our office, which is our living room, on the phone, on the phone, and when he called, and I'm like, he's like, this is Alan Burke at QVC. I'm like, Alan, Jamie Kern Lima, so great to, I was trying to like tell myself they'd be lucky to have us, like all these things.
Totally.
Meanwhile, we were down to no money. We were down to, I didn't know how we were going to stay alive as a company. And we were only doing like 1 to 2 orders a day on our website.
Oh, man.
And which, we were able to turn the lights on, but barely. And I didn't know what was going to happen. And I remember he said to me on the phone, he's like, thank you for sending your products. All of them. I sent him so many times for a couple of years. And he said, we've reviewed
all of them.
We've reviewed, your products with the whole buying team. He said it's unanimous. You're not the right fit for QVC or for our customers. And I was just like,
it's unanimous.
It's unanimous. And, he wanted me to know, like, every buyer has weighed in, and I was like devastated. Right. And I'm like, oh, but Alan, we are the right fit. And I went into like trying to pitch myself again and just like all the reasons. And he said, he thanked me. He was super kind. He thanked me for loving QVC, but said it's a no. Yeah. And at that point, I remember it felt like one of the biggest blows, because I had, when we talk about intuition, I had this feeling I couldn't shake in my gut that said, okay, you're supposed to be on QVC because you can't Photoshop live TV. You can put all these real women, different ages, shapes, sizes, prove your product works live, call them beautiful, mean it. Like, I saw the whole thing in my head. Right. But what happened was, for 2 years straight, they told me no every time. And a lot of times in life, we have these visions or these feelings that something is meant for us. And then we get no 1 time or 5 times or 20 times. And that's when we think our gut is wrong. Right. And I'll never forget that night. I went to bed, cried myself to sleep. And then I woke up the next morning feeling like, hoping it was a dream. And then when you realize it's not, right? And that happened for 3 days in a row. But when it comes to intuition, the thing was, I was praying, crying. I was like, God, I don't understand why I keep feeling this is supposed to happen, and then it doesn't. And every time I would get still and try to literally hear that voice inside, that some people call it still small voice, some people call it intuition or gut feeling. Every time I did that, I kept feeling like I was supposed to keep going. And it was like, okay, with God and grace and grit, like I'm going to trust this feeling, even though it doesn't make sense. And by the way, I should clarify this. I think we're in a society that always is like, don't give up, whatever you do, as if that's the victory. I don't think that's the victory. I think there's a lot of people in jobs they don't love, or in friendships or relationships that are not good for them, or they just keep the victory is not quitting. I don't think that's true. I think the victory is learning how to hear ourselves and trust ourselves, right? Like, like when I was in the working as a news anchor, thinking that was my dream job, I think knowing when to let go of a dream is as important as knowing when to go after one.
That's good.
Me quitting
that's a good word.
Was the victory. But I remember that feeling. after Alan Burke had said those words to me, and I felt like I just talked to this legend, and all of a sudden, even he's telling me I'm not the right fit. And he's telling me it's not going to be a yes, and all those things. And one other quick story, just on intuition. And then one fun ending to that is, we were struggling to know how are we going to stay alive, right? So this is the point where even QVC now, the head guy says no. Everyone's saying no. We're a couple years in. We're down to under $1,000 in our combined company and personal bank account, which just meant like, okay, we have a couple weeks left at any moment being able to pay bills and everything else. And we got an inbound call from a potential investor, a big private equity company. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be huge. And they loved our product. And I just, my mind went to this place of like, oh, if they invest, then I'm not going to go bankrupt. And they could probably use their power and their leverage to get us in these places that keep telling me no. And so we started taking meetings with this potential investor who's super well known. They've taken a bunch of pre-revenue companies and like a bunch of products we buy in grocery stores every day. They've turned them into household names. And I thought, we do that with It Cosmetics. So excited. And we did meeting after meeting, and I started the diligence phase where you show your whole product pipeline. And it got to the final meeting. My husband and I flew up for it. And I thought like, this is going to be life-changing. And we were in person, and I was about 3 feet from the head guy, and they congratulated us and thanked us for the product pipeline, all the kind of stuff. And he said to me, we want to let you know that, we've decided it's a no. We're going to pass on investing in It Cosmetics. And by this point, I had heard no a million times. And I was just like, okay, can you tell me why? Because, feedback is usually a gift. And I'm like, can you tell me why? And he paused for a long time, and he goes, do you want me to be really honest with you? And I'm like, yes, please. And he says, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. And in this moment, so a couple of things. When he said those words to me, and this is in person, 3 feet from him, my husband's right next to me, his whole team is there. When he said those words, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. First of all, a lifetime bodied out, like flooded my body. And it felt like I was like staring my own fear straight in the eye in a way. But I'll never forget this moment, Jen. He said that to me. I didn't even feel anger. I mean, I cried in my car later, but I didn't feel anger toward him. I got this feeling in my gut that said he's wrong. Like I felt it was this, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was this feeling that said he's wrong. Now I didn't know how to prove it. I had no sales. I had no, anything. And so over the next several years, I didn't hear from him for another 6 years, but over the next several years, just to share this in case, because here's the thing, we've all had somebody literally tell us we're not enough, or we're not
one way or another.
Right. One way or another, or they don't believe in us, or we need to change who we are if we're ever going to succeed. Right. Two things. I decided, instead of taking what he said personally, even though it hurt, what I realized, because I had done that work of knowing like why I was doing what I was doing, and my big, deep why for the company, I was able to realize, oh my gosh, he's just as much impacted by the beauty industry as I am. He's some dude deciding like, you can't make money for me because of how you look. That's basically what he's deciding. But he's really just a byproduct of an industry. And for me, it became this fuel of like, oh, wow, like this has got to change. And so that's one thing. The second thing is, over the next several years, like his words would come back in my head, right? How many times someone says something to us and we made the mistake of letting it take root, even though we didn't think we did. And so, I started really practicing this whole tool about, learning how, like I would literally imagine myself turning down the volume on his words. And then with intuition, with that feeling in that moment, I would do everything in my power to remember that feeling I had when he said it, which was he's wrong. Like that feeling. And I would try to amplify that and trust that and turn down the volume on his words. And I would do that a lot with rejection and everything else. And then, the last thing I'll say is, there's that famous saying, rejection's God's protection. And the relationship, I think the relationship, I'm like leaning over like I'm on your couch. I'm like, oh, sorry. I'm just realizing my posture in the screen. I'm like leaning into you like I'm like literally on your couch.
I'm propped. I'm like nodding. I'm with you. The same.
Totally. But there's that famous saying, rejection's God's protection. And it's just talking to you live. One of the things I just want to share is just all of us, every one of us, like our relationship with rejection and is, I think, one of the most defining things in our life about if we're ever going to become the person we're born to be, and like how we handle rejection. And the one thing that just hundreds and hundreds of rejections, I started seeing them as like, okay, I'm going to be one of the people that's going to trust my gut and go after I'm going to be a brave one that's going to like try to go after my dream or step into all of who I am. And I think with anyone that's ever done that in history or otherwise, it comes with so many rejections. And so I kind of started to learn to see rejection almost as a victory in a way. It's like a victory of being a brave one who's going after who she's born to be in life. And, it would still hurt and all those other things. But on the last thing on the rejections, God's protection, I try to see it that way every day in life too. And, 6 years later, when L'Oreal bought this little company I started in my living room, the day before the sale happened, they decided, because they're a public company, they decided to release the purchase price. So I didn't know that was happening. And I kind of panicked, because what happened is the very next day, it's on the homepage of the Wall Street Journal. It's everywhere, online, everywhere. It Cosmetics sells for $1.2 billion cash. And I heard from that investor.
Bet you did.
First time in 6 years.
Bet you did.
He said, congratulations on the L'Oreal deal. I'm so happy for you. I was wrong. And I learned it would have been the most successful investment in his firm's history had he invested. But here's the thing with rejection being protection, like at the time that I met with him, I was so desperate. Like, I didn't know, I probably would have given him the majority of the company for
totally.
Right. Yeah. But because he didn't believe in me, and a lot of other people did on the journey, but because he didn't, by the time we sold the L'Oreal, we were still the largest shareholders. I was like, thank goodness he rejected me.
That's right.
And then Alan Burke with QVC, after we launched on QVC, he became one of my greatest mentors in my life.
That's great.
And when he retired from QVC, right, he was the head of all QVC Beauty that kind of had me crying myself to sleep and saying, you're not the right fit. Well, after he retired from QVC, he was such an important mentor in my life. We actually hired him for our advisory board at Cosmetics, a paid position. So the guy who rejected me was working for me, right?
It's so great.
Just share that, like no one can tell you, how big your dreams can be, or that you're not the right fit, or that
so good.
You change who you are to ever achieve the dreams on your heart.
Oh my gosh. Those two full circle moments are incredible. Like, just absolutely incredible.
Do you believe that your optimism allows this all to work? Because if you are looking at losses as in, well, this was meant to be part of my journey, and this scar is actually attractive, because that's how I think about it. I think about all those losses as scars, and like that scar giving you character, and that's attractive. Do you believe that optimism was an incredibly big factor and ingredient in your success?
I think optimism is great. I think, though, that knowing why we're doing what we're doing, listening to our gut, and going after our calling, like literally living our calling, I think that's the victory.
Hold on though.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting question. Every human needs levels of affirmation along the way to sustain that. Right? Yeah. And so in the beginning, where you're not seeing those results, for many, and you might have, I've always seen results pretty quickly in my good calls. So I always try to think about someone who's not seeing it. So because they don't have optimism, they have delusion, and they think they're going to be, Beyonce when they can't sing, right? Do you feel like believing in your calling gets affirmed along the way? What do you rely on in that beginning? Don't you think blind faith is actually completely grounded in optimism?
I mean, for me, my faith is a huge part of my
I'm sorry.
life.
I'm going to take religion as faith out on
Yeah.
I'm saying I was, I'm just thinking about you, young you in this moment, and I'm really fascinated by it. I'm meant to do this because what you're talking about is what I love, which is the journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm trying to get into your, go ahead, please.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I don't think the victory is the outcome, right? I don't think the victory, listen, I know how accomplished you are and everything. I know you're gonna have the New York Jets one day. I know all that. But I don't think that's the victory. I think the victory is the journey of actually like stepping into all of who you are and not talking yourself out of your own truth. And what I mean by that is this journey of that we're talking about, right? Of course, optimism, of course, resiliency to get back up every time you're knocked down, of course, all those things. But I think that so many people listening right now, if they don't ever learn to get still and hear their own truth and hear their own intuition, I think what's going to happen, and this is what happens to most people, is they end up staying in their comfort zone. They end up putting their own immediate failures on a pedestal or other people's opinions or self-doubt. They end up talking themselves out of their own truth. And then they end up never actually becoming the person they're born to be. So for me, I don't think like the fact that I was able to build $1 billion company is the victory. I think the moments of me knowing this is what I'm supposed to do and trusting it, even when it doesn't make sense. And I'll give you one example, okay, of this. So, and maybe this will make sense because optimism, of course, is important, and I know what you're saying. But I think the biggest thing is learning how to hear yourself and trust yourself. I really believe that. There was a moment.
How do you define that as a term? Because I view that as self-belief and confidence and optimism. I think that you're such a, very quickly I'm like, oh, okay, this is my sister. Like literally within the first 3 seconds, I'm like, oh, I see. So I'm trying to do, and I apologize because I'm hoping a different voice might do this for the listener. I'm trying to figure out what words you use to quantify. I fully agree with you, everything you're saying. I'm wondering if you view optimism as, so I think optimism, similar to what we were talking about earlier, sometimes gets pegged as delusion.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about, you see where I'm going? Because I could almost feel you doing that right now. And I'm like, I get you, sister. Because like this is why it's so great. Wordsmithing matters, right? Like, for example, hustle has gotten demonized as like burnout. So I no longer use it because I don't need it. You know what I'm going to call it? Work ethic. Call it what you want. Here's what I can tell you. For all the belief you had and all the love you had in doing what you were doing, I'm pretty confident based on your outcome that there was a lot of work ethic there. And so whatever you want to call it, and sometimes I just think about, I know the word hustle triggers people, so I use the word work ethic now because I don't want to ever not let anybody who cares to listen to me not realize that if you don't put in the work, it is impossible. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I just had a big aha moment that what you're saying is optimism. I 1,000,000,000% agree with. And I'm thinking of that right now as belief. Same thing. Yep. And now I'm right there with you. Like, here's the thing and then I want to share one quick story with you too, that hopefully someone listening right now maybe needs to hear. But I mean, when I look back, it's like when people are like, oh, how did you start with close to nothing and build $1 billion company? It's like, yeah, I got back up every time I got knocked down and I followed my gut and I worked really, really hard. But I do think that one of the most important things I did was just like how to build $1 billion company from nothing. Like, I think one of the most important things is making that decision to believe that you can.
Yes.
And for me, that's optimism, exactly what you're saying. And I guess I call it belief. So yeah, 1,000,000% with that. And one more thing, just on maybe people listening to us right now that are like, oh, Gary, like Jamie, I trust my gut sometimes and it's wrong, or I tried it once and it didn't work, or I don't know how to hear my own intuition. I just want to say, I think that it is a muscle that we can all build. And I think people have to give themselves grace, right? It reminds me of like when you start to meditate, a lot of people try it and they can't do it. They're like, they go through their to-do list in their head the whole time they're trying to meditate, but you have to like give yourself grace and start. And what I would say, whether it's entrepreneurs or someone who's 14 years old and out there dating right now, I would say when you start to look back at your experiences and think about moments when you had a gut feeling and you didn't follow it. Like we've all dated like a sketchy guy or or had a, and like, you're like, his phone didn't really just like shut off for 3 days, or he didn't lose the phone. He went like, and then you kind of make that decision of like, okay.
Talk to me about, I mean, we are really vibing here. I actually want to talk to you offline because I just have had the thought. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm so excited. Insecurity.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're like, to me, like thinking to my girlfriends, friends that were girls that were dating guys, that I knew what the guys were doing, which was they were preying on my friends' insecurities, and sometimes brilliant, beautiful girls. And I'm like, this fucking sucks.
Yeah.
This woman, you really triggered something in me. This woman, I'm thinking about 4 or 5 friends through the last 20 years. This woman is subjectively, and if we had 100 people ask, is a million miles better than this man. This man has figured out the cheat code that if he makes her feel insecure, he has the leverage. Thoughts?
Yep. I think that happens every single day. And I think that we look for people that treat us how we believe we deserve to be treated. Like we find partners that need it.
So you go with, cool, before you worry about jerk off Johnny, this is a big game of your own lack of self-love towards you.
It's your own lack of self-love, because here's the thing, and I don't know your friends, so I'll just say this. I'll make a general statement.
You'll appreciate this. This was mainly 17 to 25 years old, because you see that so commonly there. I mean, in later stages, people are in really deep relationships and you're in different parts of your life. When you're going through high school and college, you're spending so much time with people, you get better reads to the cleanness of the data is like, oh, this is really fucked up. When you're older, you're running in different circles, you don't really get to see it as easily.
Right. And I think that whether, no matter your age, this is what I believe. I think that when someone's treating us like crap and we stay with them, I think it's because we deep down inside don't believe we deserve better yet. And here's the thing, for people like that are dating your friend who's totally screwing them over, right? If you were to bring the best, most amazing, beautifully like kind person into their space, that same girl would probably put them in the friend zone.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, because they don't yet deep down inside believe. Yeah, they deserve more.
And also people value different things through their life. One of the things, right now we live through a generation desperately interested in blaming social media for lack of accountability. They're just pointing fingers, right? Like if you are in a good place with yourself and your perspective is strong around gratitude, an anonymous person's negative comment is not going to ruin your day.
Yeah. And I think when it does, I think that's what's so tough, right? That's when it's a reminder to ourselves, like, oh yeah, we have some more work to do. One of the things I talk about in my book, Believe It, is just that ability to learn to turn down the volume on certain things and turn up the volume on other things. Like one example, we were 3 years into building the company, right? I was hearing no from everyone, Gary, like from all the retailers I dreamed of carrying our products that I used to shop in, right? I would save my tip money, like I mentioned, as a Denny's waitress, and buy products in the department stores or in
what year was this?
So we launched 2007. Like I quit my job 2007. I wrote the business plan on my honeymoon flight to South Africa with my husband. Not the most romantic way to kick off a marriage. And we both got back, quit our jobs, dove all in. I thought, Gary, maybe so many entrepreneurs listening, I thought, oh, if I just pour everything I have and actually create a product that works, like it's just going to sell. If it's that good, it's just going to sell. And then I didn't realize it would be I've had a lot of jobs in my life, but being an entrepreneur is by far.
Well, you especially also built that brand different than building a brand today where you can use Shopify and social media to build it. You had to get a yes from Sephora, Ulta, Walmart, Walgreens, and Macy, whoever it was. And that is difficult when you're innovating the way you did. Do you know that my whole life is no? Do you know VaynerMedia? A lot of people listening don't know this. Most brands don't want to say yes to VaynerMedia. We don't want to do a commercial and then go to sleep. Like we don't want to take 12 weeks to do the perfect commercial and then do print ads that look like it, or banner ads, or digital programmatic. My whole life building VaynerMedia is no. Everything I do as Gary Vee is easy. I just do it with the audience. But VaynerMedia is exactly, I know what you're living through, because when you innovate and you're doing something different and you don't look the part, you didn't work at Procter & Gamble for 13 years.
Yeah.
They're like, what's this Washington State thing? Like, you know what it is.
Well, and it's wild because I would go in and start, I would pitch the product, and, we were staying alive on social media. So we were getting, people were writing just blogs at that point, and we were selling like 1 to 3 orders a day on our website, and people were spreading the word. That was the only way we barely stayed alive. But all the retailers, exactly what you said. And by the way, I've learned this, like when you're doing something that's authentic or that is different, but even if it's just authentic to you, even in a crowded industry, by definition, it's novel. By definition, it's never been done before. And I really believe, looking back now at this journey and everything, I believe that like even a lot of visionaries, touted visionaries, I think they can't imagine anything being successful unless subconsciously they have proof in the back that they've already seen it and it's already worked. So it's like, of course, so many people are going to say no to your dream or doubt your dream if they've never seen it done before. And we had 3 years of every single beauty retailer saying, no, you're not the right fit. It's not going to work. You're not right for our customers. And by the way, we talk about gut feeling. I kept having this gut feeling we're supposed to go on QVC, because then I could actually like show my bright red rosacea and prove live that our product works, unlike the photoshopped ads on TV. And this is just something to share for someone who might need to hear this right now, who's having a gut feeling, but they feel like they're wrong. Like I kept having this feeling, and every time I would do a meeting with QVC, it would be a no. Every phone call I'd finally get, like I got their head guy, Alan Burke, on the phone. He's like a legend. He's responsible for building this $1 billion beauty empire on QVC. And I finally got him on a call, and I thought for sure it was going to be a yes. And because if he's taking his precious time, and it was about a minute into the call, and he said, I just need to let you know, we've reviewed your product with all the buyers. It's unanimous. It's a no. You're not the right fit for QVC. And of course, I like poured my heart out. I'm like, oh, but I am the right fit. And then we were down to under $1,000 in our bank account at that point. So I remember like crying myself to sleep. And long story short, a year later, when I finally did get a yes to go on QVC, I took this big risk that I was advised not to by consultants, and I put real women of all shapes and sizes and skin tones and skin challenges, and I showed my own bare face and all the things that had never been done before. We sold out at the 10-minute mark. I was crying on national television because it's live. QVC is live to 100 million homes.
You knew the truth, and your heart would win, not students telling you what to do.
Yeah, and listen, it was a big risk, but I feel like I know this lesson, that like I know this, and now I've seen it play out with thousands of entrepreneurs over the years. But I know that authenticity alone doesn't guarantee success, but inauthenticity guarantees failure.
Love that.
Right?
A handful of things that you said jumped out at me that I want to put a pin in and come back to. You talked about the role of quitting. And I couldn't agree more that this concept of sort of, always push through. And I think if you had owned that idea in the way that it's talked about in our culture, you'd probably still be a TV journalist. So what is the difference between quitting what you thought was your dream job, or what is the balance between quitting what you thought was your dream job and trusting your intuition to do something outside of that seems risky and unknown and scary? Help us understand how, what was going on in your mind, because there's so many people right now listening that are like, that's me. I got a good thing. I want to chase my dreams. I want to trust my gut, but I'm not quite sure what it's telling me.
Yeah. And I think learning to like get still and actually hear our own gut is so important. And I think it's so hard. I think that, we all, I believe, Chase, I believe we all have this knowing, right? Like to your point, there's so many people probably listening right now, watching right now, that if they were to just get still for a minute and check in with their gut, even if they're rusty on doing this, right? They usually know if they're in the right job or in the right relationship, or if they need to maybe end a friendship, or they know if they have more inside of them, like, and it's on their heart to write a book or to take that first step and start photography, right? Whatever that is, if we get still, I really believe we all have that knowing. And I think that learning, one of the things I talk a lot about a lot in the book is, how do you start building that muscle again of intuition and learning to trust it? Because I think, for something, it's for so many of us, it's a lifelong journey of really learning how. And it's like we keep refining our intuition as we go. But what I see happening now, and I have the blessing of mentoring, so many entrepreneurs now and a lot of women. And what I see happening so often is that, as we go on in life, we literally stop learning how to hear our own gut and stop listening to it. And I think part of that is because, first of all, the noise of self-doubt and our own inner critic gets so loud all around us that sometimes it's hard to even break through and know what is our own knowing anymore. We then often have, other people's opinions. And sometimes that can come in the form of people we love so much, like our inner circle, our friends, our family, who love us and often, and usually they'll mean well, but they often can't see the potential of our own hopes and dreams because they're seeing it through the lens of their own limitations, right? And their own fear and their own life experience. And so all of a sudden we have, all the noise of and by the way, anyone who's been an entrepreneur or is right now, often we all share, right? We share an experience where, at some point, I can share my own, at some point when I was getting no traction in my business the first 3 years, I had so many people say like, are you sure you should have quit your job? Are you sure you're qualified to be doing this? Are you like, I love you, but I'm worried about you. Are you, all those things, right? And we have to be so careful because at some point that noise can get so loud too. Then if anyone out there who's going through an experience like I went through for a number of years, when I first launched the business, I had these experts that I would put on a pedestal. And in my case, it was all the department stores that, as a Denny's waitress, I would save my tip money to buy a makeup product in one of those department stores. And I just thought, wow, if they carry my product, this is going to be amazing. And all the, QVC and the beauty retailers, I put them on a pedestal. And so for the first 3 years of my business, when all of them said no over and over and over and said I wasn't the right fit, or I needed to not use real women as models, I needed to do the I call it antiquated standard of beauty, which is like flawless Photoshop skin. They all told me that's what I need to do to sell product. And it was 3 years of them basically saying, and some of them in these actual words, you're not the right fit for us or for our customers. And, so we get experts telling us that, or for a lot of us, it's just like no traction that we thought was going to happen with our dream or our idea or our creation or our sales of our product or business. So we have all of that. And then we turn the news on and we're like, right. So all of this is going on, and it's so hard if we don't take a big step back. And this is one of the things that, again, I share so much that I did wrong too, that'll hopefully save people a lot of nights crying themselves to sleep. But one of the things I did right was like learn how to really get still and hear my own knowing and my own knowing that said you're supposed to keep going or you're not. And to me, trusting ourselves, when we learn to hear ourselves and trust ourselves, that's the victory in life. The victory isn't like, oh, building $1 billion company or, oh, this. To me, it's learning how to get still and trust our knowing and know that we're on our own path of becoming all of who we are and who we're born to be. And I think what happens, because it's so easy to let this happen, is all the noise from everyone else and our own self-doubt, all of it gets so loud that it becomes so much easier to just like stay in our comfort zone and not go after the dream when it seems hard, or not keep going, even though, you know what I mean? Even though like we feel like we should, it becomes easier to just stay in our comfort zone, which comes at the price of, I think, it starts to chip away at our soul. We start to risk talking ourselves out of our own truth and never become the person we're born to be. Not to be all dramatic on your show, but like that's
No.
really to me what it is. It's like we literally can talk ourselves out of our own truth and never become the person we're born to be. And how many people do we know that have done that? So many, the majority, right? And that's what I think is the biggest challenge as a creator, as someone with a dream on your heart, as someone who knows you have more to give or serve or love, is how do you step into that? Yeah.
It's so true, and like it's hard to overstate. I want to join in your symphony here. This idea that the advice comes from people that you admire, you've spent so much time learning about and thinking about, as you said, and some of the people that are closest to you that love you dearly and certainly don't want to see you in pain. And I think those voices are trusted is part of what makes playing through and trusting your gut and following your intuition, all the things that you said, so hard. And so to underscore your point, quiet, still awareness of who you are and what you believe in. It sounds easy just to say, listen to that, but I believe it's hard. And so I'm wondering if you can share some of the specifics. Do you go on a 10-day Vipassana no talking retreat? Do you go on a long sojourn in the mountains? Is it a daily meditation, mindfulness, prayer practice? Like what are some of the things
Yeah.
that you did to actually quiet the noise? Because right now everyone would like to quiet those voices in their head, but
Yeah.
help us see it through your eyes.
I've never done one of those retreats, but I would love to. I would love
My
to.
wife, my wife is a super retreater. She is like, she teaches meditation and mindfulness, so she's always gone for 10 days and comes back like this enlightened being, and I'm toiling away and doing the dishes or whatever. But I too endeavored to do that one day. But I want to know what your process is.
Yeah. So, for me, I and I think everyone can do this. I think that it all starts, and this is how I started, because this, at the end of the day, my book is not just some big business success story. My book is really a story about a girl who went from not believing in herself to believing in herself and not knowing how to hear my own intuition, right? To learning how, and then learning how to trust it. And really a journey of going from doubting I'm enough to knowing I'm enough. And, I just think, it's the story of so many other people right now as well on their own journey of learning to do that, learning to believe in themselves and trust themselves and know they're enough. And for me, it started with really basic, simple, like taking 3 to 5 minutes a day. That's it. And so for some people, they have chaos going on in their house. They have kids running everywhere. They have all this stuff, right? Especially right now in this season that we're in. And so, it can be as simple even as, going and sitting in the car. And a lot of parents will understand that one. Going and sitting in the car by yourself for 2 minutes. Or, going into your bathroom and closing the door. And it starts just, I think the best way for me, I've been able to really build my intuition over the years is just to take 2 to 5 minutes and actually start to learn, what does it even feel like? What do I even think and feel in my knowing about anything, right? And I think for a lot of people that start this, because for a lot of people, hearing their own knowing, it'll be the first time ever, or the first time in a long time once they start doing this again. And I think that it's critical to everything in life to get back in touch with this. But, it can be as simple as 2 to 5 minutes of literally just sitting there and just saying, what do I feel and think? And, asking yourself a question and seeing if you answer it. For a lot of people, by the way, this is how they hear God or whatever faith it is they practice, through their own gut or their own intuition. And, I think it's something that we all have to give ourselves grace in the process of, because I think, well, at least what happened for me, and I know a lot of other people too, is that, you try to do it, and just like trying to meditate for the first time, you're like, oh, I tried to do it, but I'm running through my to-do list in my own mind, and, all the things of the day, and like, that's so normal. And you just have to give yourself grace and really work on building that muscle. The other thing is to, really start to pay attention and think through, are there experiences in your life where you trusted yourself, that gut feeling, and it worked? And really reflect on those, right? And pay attention to them. And also, are there times when you just had this gut feeling like, maybe you're dating and you have this feeling like, oh, he's sketchy, and he says his phone broke for 3 days in a row. And he or she is lying, right? But you make the decision to ignore your gut. And then, we always learn the truth in
plays
the
out.
end. It plays
Right.
out.
It plays
But
out.
like paying attention to like all the times, because for all of us, we have those moments in life continually. And a lot of times we just go so fast through life. We're so busy. We live almost numb in a way. And we disconnect or disassociate from those moments that are our most powerful teachers. And listen, I think I continuously do this to this day as I look back. And one of the things when I look back at some of the biggest miscalculations I've had or mistakes I've made, a lot of times they come down to not listening to my gut and or doubting it, thinking, oh, one story just to share is after 3 years of hearing no from, all of these beauty retailers, because I launched the company in my living room and couldn't afford to hire anyone for the first 3 years. And my husband and I were just kind of doing every job we possibly could do. And I got to the point, it was so scrappy, Chase. Like my middle name is Marie, and Marie got her own email address at one point. So it was Marie at itcosmetics.com, and she was heading customer service and PR. And like, if this were today, Marie would be emailing, Chase Jarvis, great news. Our founder's available for an interview. And like, she would pitch Good Morning America, everybody, and often get no reply or ignored. But Marie hustled, and, we did so many scrappy things for years when we couldn't afford to hire anyone. And when all these retailers were saying no. And then I'll never forget one powerful story to share in case someone listening needs to hear this right now. And maybe they're going through a season of rejection, or they're going through a season of being told they're not enough, or just feeling like they're not enough. I remember, and by the way, I would email LinkedIn, everyone in LinkedIn who worked at QVC or Sephora or anywhere, I would email them and send them product. And it was just 3 years of hustling and everyone saying no. And I'd finally gotten a guy named Alan Burke who headed all of beauty at QVC to review my products and get on a phone call with me. And he is in the beauty industry, he's a legend, right? So he's responsible for bringing all of the really amazing department store brands we all know onto QVC, which QVC is a live television shopping channel. So it's broadcast to 100 million homes live, and their sales goals are super high. And what I learned is
I've watched your clip so many times. It's incredible.
You
Yeah,
have?
it's amazing. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but it is.
I
If you
didn't know
haven't
that
watched
you've
it,
seen
yeah,
that.
of course, it's incredible.
Well, you know what I didn't, so I didn't know a lot of things going into this experience in my life, but I learned from other entrepreneurs that you can sell more in an hour show on QVC than all year in department stores, because so many people watch it and they have such a large, loyal customer following. And so anyhow, I finally got Alan Burke on a phone call, and I thought, okay, we were down to no money. I didn't know how we were going to survive. And I'll never forget, like the phone rang and he's like, "Hello, Jamie, Alan Burke from QVC." And I just thought, oh my gosh, if this legend is going to be on the phone with me and spend his precious time, it's got to be a yes, right? It's got to be a yes. And I was like, Alan, and I was trying to muster up every ounce of confidence. And I was trying to tell myself, like, they're lucky to have us. Like, be confident, Jamie. They're lucky to have us, even though they had said no for years, right? And so I was pacing around. I'll never forget, I was pacing around our office, which was our living room in our apartment. And I said, Alan, it's Jamie Kern Lima. Thank you so much. I'm so excited. And he says, well, I want to let you know we've reviewed your products with all of our buyers. It's a unanimous agreement that it's a no. We're going to pass. You're not right for QVC or for our customers. You're not the right fit. But thank you. And so right away I went into like, oh, but I am the right fit. And I tried to like pour my heart out again to getting him to, and he's like, thank you for loving QVC, but it's a no. And I remember this moment because tears were streaming down my face, right? Because I didn't know how we were going to stay in business. And I thanked him for his time. And I literally crawled under the covers in my bed and cried myself to sleep, and then woke up the next morning hoping it was a dream. It's a bad dream. You ever had that happen where you get really bad news and then you, right? And you wake up and you're like, oh, it was real. And so that happened 3 days in a row. And I remember this time, and these are the moments I think that define us in life, when we can really learn to hear our knowing. I talk a lot in the book about creating this imaginary toolbox of things I pull from. Like, it could be quotes, it could be excerpts from your show, right? It could be, I have underdog stories. I have things that just remind me of who I am, of what I'm made of, and I pull from them when I need it. And so I was, doing that, and I was also just checking in, and even sobbing myself to sleep 3 days in a row. When I would get still and check in with my own gut, it kept saying I was supposed to keep going. And these are the moments I think that define our life, because I didn't know at that time I would create what's now the largest beauty company in the country, right? Like, I didn't know any of that. All I knew is for 3 years, everyone said no. And I finally got the head guy, Alan Burke, on a phone call, the legend in the beauty space. And he tells me I'm not the right fit for QVC or for him. And 3 days later, after crying I check in with my gut, and it says, you're supposed to keep going. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Like, you're not supposed to quit. And that knowing and making that decision to trust it is how I kept going. And, to put a really fun bow on this story, in case anyone listening needs this right now.
We all need it, Jamie.
I just think, you know what, Chase, it's like sometimes we go through these seasons of rejection, and they don't make sense, and they hurt, and it's so easy to have them all equate to just self-doubt in our own head and doubt of our dreams. And that's why I just think checking in with our knowing and trusting it is so important. But I kept going and kept going. And when I shared this story in the book, and it's a long one, so I'll skip it now, but I'll skip the how. But eventually, through a trade show, through a really cool moment, through a gutsy moment of me taking a big risk, got a yes to get one shot on QVC. So this is after 3 years of no's. We got down to under $1,000 in our bank account, which was our personal and our company combined. And I finally got one shot and our first really big yes to go on QVC. But here's what that meant, Chase. It meant, and we were only selling 2 to 3 orders a day on our website, right? And barely staying alive. And I learned, okay, you get one shot. You're going to get one shot to present your product live on QVC, and you're going to get a 10-minute window. And you either need to hit the sales goal or not come back. I was like, okay. And what that meant was I had to sell over 6,000 units of our concealer. We were only doing 2 to 3 orders a day on our site. I did over 6,000 units of our concealer.
In 10 minutes.
In 10 minutes, live on live television, no script, no teleprompter, nothing. And then to top it all off, and anyone who runs a business where they're making product, they'll understand this part, but it was a consignment deal. And what that meant was we had to pay for all the own inventory ourselves, ship it in, and we wouldn't get paid for anything except for what ended up selling in that 10-minute window. And whatever didn't sell would be shipped back to us. And in our case,
you own it. Yeah, you own it then, right?
And because we were only doing 2 to 3 orders a day, it was like, oh, if anything got shipped back to us, I mean, there was nowhere to sell it. Like we would be completely out of business and bankrupt. And so it was a really tough decision. But after 3 years of everyone saying no, we decided to take this risk and applied for 22 SBA loans that all said no. And the 23rd SBA loan gave us enough money to cover just the inventory cost of this one shot on QVC. So it's a moment that would end up being one of the most defining moments in my whole career, but also life so far. And I think it's a universal moment because, a lot of times all of us will have moments where we know what we stand for, we know what we believe in, but then all of a sudden our values are challenged. or everything's on the line. And that's what happened here. We made all the inventory, did everything, and we're ready to get our one shot on QVC. And I was so stressed out and felt so much pressure, because I knew this one shot would like literally make or break our whole company. So I flew out to QVC a week early before the one airing, and I sat in this rental car in the parking lot, praying, crying, so overwhelmed, because what ended up happening was, we hired third-party consultants that are experts, and they help so many people sell their products live on TV. They're amazing. But they all told us the same thing, which is that, okay, if you want your best shot at success in this 10-minute window, you need to hire, you need to use these type of models that all have perfect skin. And I'm like, okay, but that's exactly why I'm not doing the business. Like I'm doing this to try and actually shift culture and beauty and do something bigger than myself. And I have this vision that I'm going to, use, models that have real skin problems and all ages and shapes and sizes and skin tones. And they would just look at me and tell me, like, listen, if you want our advice and the best shot at success, here's what you need to do. And so I started arguing with them and saying, okay, but I get that's how it's always been done. And I get that's the only way it's been successful so far. But intuitively, if I'm sitting at home watching this TV show and I see models that don't look like me, how do I know the product's going to work for me? And we would kind of get into it. And I was like, what if I just take my makeup off on national TV and show my bright red rosacea? And they were mortified at that idea. You know what I mean? And so it was really tricky, because sometimes we have moments in life where, like, we have to decide, do you put the experts on a pedestal or your own intuition on one? You know what I mean? And that's hard, and especially hard when everything's on the line. So I sat in that car and cried, because that just felt like the right thing at the time. And just, it felt like such a big decision. And I thought, okay, well, what if I do what they're saying to do, and then I become successful, then I try it my way? I'm like, well, I know you can't fake authenticity. You know what I mean? And I would have regrets if I did that. So I knew what I needed to do, but it's like sometimes we know the right thing to do, but it's the hard thing to do. And I sat there in that car and and I think a lot of creators or people that have vision and big dreams will be able to connect with this, where I just sat there and said, why am I doing what I'm doing, and who am I doing this for? And I kept imagining, like, who would that woman be watching on the other end? And if I was going to get one shot, and that's it. And I kept imagining, like, a single mom in Nebraska folding laundry for some reason. I imagined it, like who was too busy to remember she mattered and that she's beautiful and all those things. And if she was going to give me a few seconds of her precious time and turn the television on and see me, like, I'd rather have her see me showing women who look like her, calling them beautiful, meaning it, and have her not buy anything. Like, I'd rather do that than sell a ton of product and stand for nothing. And so it was like, I knew what I had to do, but I was also scared. And to complete the story, the 10-minute.
We love, like, this is why this format exists. Please, Jamie, just keep going. This is amazing.
Well, thank you for sharing these. I mean, I just feel like we're all in this together. You know what I mean? And it's part of why I wrote this book, but also, like, part of why I'm so excited to be on your show. And thank you again for having me. Is I think when we share these real stories, right? Because no one would know these things when they just go, oh, there's a really,
she made it.
Yeah, totally. And that's all you ever see online. Oh, she made it. So, but these are universal experiences, I think. And a lot of people don't talk about them. And when you look on social media, you just see everyone's highlight reel, and you don't see the rejection or the pain or any of the things that we go through. And when we don't see them, then we just feel alone in them, And so
we're comparing our day-to-day crappy experiences of the, forgetting to turn the dryer on before you go to bed so that when you wake up, your clothes are wet. We have the experience of getting a parking ticket, and we're comparing all those aspects of our lives to everyone else's highlight reel that you see on TV, or in your case, the product in the store. And I agree, it's toxic. And I want to say thank you for having the courage to be as vulnerable as you are in the book.
Ladies and gentlemen, rock this house and welcome to the stage, Jamie Kern Lima!
Jamie Kern Lima!
Every single one of us has had someone tell us we're not enough. Every single one of us has had someone say words to us that hurt.